retired chairman of the Fine and Performing Arts Department and director of drama at Colorado Academy of Denver. He is an award-winning author, performer, stage director, and teacher. He's the author of 6 award-winning books on Hispanic and Western culture and arts, and is a Colorado heritage artist storyteller who has performed throughout the nation at festivals, universities, schools, and art centers. His specialty is the oral traditions of the Hispanic Southwest, and he is also a member of the Colorado Endowment for the Humanities Chicago program for the historical presentations of 5 different figures. That's a lot, so.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank all of you that came this morning and during other times to come here and everything. Before we get started, just so I get a feel for the crowd, how many of you were at my presentation last night? Oh, good, thank you so much. So I'll be referring a little bit to that, so I'm glad we have a reference point about what I'm going to be talking about. What I want to talk about today is really the role of ideas. You know, last night's presentation was, I was creating a character, a historical character, and when you're creating a character, there's a lot of ways to come from it, right? And the presenter has to make some choices. I'm going to do this instead of this. I'm going to concentrate on this instead of that. And last night, I'm glad a lot of you were there. Those of you that weren't there, I'll give you a little encapsulation of it. There's a presentation of an American cowboy, the vaquero, America. Say, El Vaquero, America's first cowboy. And then what I try to do is counter a lot of the mythical ideas around the cowboy character and how it originated. And then to talk about what the interior life of a person is, what the daily experiences were, and what that person felt about it. So those of you that saw the show last night, you do know that was what my effort was, and I hope it translated over to you. What was that person's interior life like? So today, I'm not going to do that again, because we did that last night. I'm going to give a different type of presentation today around the origins of cowboy ranch and cowboy culture in the Americas. And to give you a little preference to this, I do know a lot about history. I spend a lot of time thinking about history. I'm reading history books all the time. I'm just always trying to raise my game is what I'm always trying to do. And one of the ways to do that is with more information. So that's just, I call it book learning, right? You just have to know different ideas about it and everything. And then I spend a lot of time thinking about history. And so it's going to seem like I'm just improvising and making it up as I go, and then I'm just riffing on a lot of ideas this morning. And I am! But it's all coming from a through line. And the through line I want to emphasize is, why are we the way we are, right? Why am I the way I am? Why are we the way we are? And I do have some ideas before I get started that I want to lay a little groundwork on about what I think about history. I was talking to some people last night, giving me a ride back to where I was staying. And then I did mention to them, and it sounds like I'm just being a smart aleck about it, but I really do believe this. One of my main goals in my presentation is entertainment. And then I did read the little article that the newspaper, the very generous article, the newspaper ran on me a couple of days ago. The headline character, but I did one for each one of us. And my last line was something I do believe in. Imagine history disguised as fun. That's not an idea people put together, history and fun, right? So what I like to do is this, I'd like to say, one of my goals is I want to counter people's idea that history is like math, that evil thing they made us do in school. And then, of course, I love history, but as soon as you bring up history, I see people's eyes go blank. Oh my gosh, not history. So I need to ask you some questions before we get started. How many of you forget the dates of history when things happen? The dates, get the dates mixed up. Just forget the dates, get them all mixed up, right? Dates are tough. They're like poetry. You just gotta memorize it, right? It's brain work. All right, forget the dates. That's okay. How many of you get the names mixed up? How many get the places mixed up? That's why people hate history. You got the dates, you got the names, you got the events, you get them all mixed up. And then the teacher gives you a test, right? That's right, people hate history. And then even the United States, the present educational system hates history. It's all STEM nowadays, right? It's all STEM, science, technology, engineering, coding, it's all STEM. And then people in the arts, like myself, then readjusted it to STEAM. Had the A, at the arts. But we've forgotten the social studies, right? I know the social studies is not mentioned once anywhere in all that, History's under the social studies umbrella. So I love these, Jay Leno did it every now and then, these late night TV show people, they'll do these man on the street things. And David Letterman would do that too. And they'd go ask people, who is George Washington? Didn't he free the slaves? And a tremendous ignorance about history. So I'm here to counter that a little bit today, okay? History disguised as fun. Dates are important because they sequence things, right? It lets you know what happened first, what happened next. And then the names are important. You have to know the names of some people, kind of. And then the events and places, all of it is important. But the whole reason for it is it tells us who we are, who I am. I do have a favorite saying about history that I'd like to share with audiences. It's by one of our greatest American authors, William Faulkner. In one of his books, the exact line is, history is not dead. In fact, it's not even past. And that sounds like something undecipherable, like you can't understand it. History is not dead. In fact, it's not even past. And I believe that. I view history like a wheel. So it's going to come back around, right? It's always going to come back around. The other idea I view history is this. Like a river rushing, a torrent, always going from the past to the future. Now the past, you can study the past. If you ask young kids about history, they always say the same thing. Oh, it's about dead people and things that happened in the past, right? That's the idea people have about history. And then the future, well, we don't know about that. We can imagine about it and everything like that. But this river flowing from the past to the future, we're in the river. We're in the river. We're making history with our daily lives. I'm very aware that I work at a history museum in Denver. I work at the mothership, the History Colorado Museum, the main state historical museum, and I'm in the education department there. So I spend all my days teaching people about history, talking about history. The history of the West is a specialty of mine, all those different subjects, especially the history of Colorado and Hispanic and Latino arts and culture, the American Southwest and Mexico. So I know a lot about it and everything, and I think a lot about it. And history is about dead people in the past, right? That's what trips you up about it. But I like all of us to think about this. One day, people are going to be studying us. Right? They're going to be looking at pictures of us. And I tell kids, like we do, pictures of people in the back for the past. They're going to be looking at pictures of us, and they're going to be going, look how funny their hair was. Look how funny their clothes were. Their cars, they had to drive them themselves. So the idea that someone's going to be studying us one day, and they always say hindsight's 20/20. You can see very clearly looking backwards. See, that's the problem. When we look back, we really see very clearly kind of what was going on. And one of the most common things that you come up when you come out of that type of awareness is, what were they thinking? Didn't they know what was happening? Why did they make all those mistakes? And why did they not understand their own time so well? And that's why we study history. Because by understanding things from the past, it's going to reveal things about us. And one day, someone's going to be studying my time. I don't want them to be thinking about, gee, that Angel guy, was it 2017 or 20, what year was that? And, no, I don't want them thinking about that. It's kind of like with the presentation I did about El Vaquero last night. I want them thinking about who was he, what did he feel what happened to him, right? What happened to that guy? And why wasn't he smarter about his own time? Why did he make all those missteps? Couldn't he see it? And the reason is, it's hard to evaluate the present when you're inside of it. But when you're looking back, one day, guaranteed, people are going to be writing PhD dissertations, people are going to be writing books, people are going to be making movies about this year's presidential election, right? It's a story. Things are happening that have never happened. We're able to live through that. When you're looking at history, people are going to say, they're always looking for primary sources. Primary sources are the person who actually lived it, the person who wrote the first journal, the person who took the first picture, the person who wrote the first diary. When you're studying history, you're always looking for primary source material because that's the first version of people who actually lived it. We are primary source material. One day, people are going to say, what was it like to live through a global pandemic? Sit down right here, my boy. Do I have a story to tell you, right? We will be primary source material about what it was like to live through a global pandemic. We're going to be able to be primary source material. What was it like when it seemed like democracy in America was going to blow up in the presidential election in 2024? We lived it. We're primary source material. We are actually living history right now. So this is all prefaced. Now this has nothing to do with the Cowboy thing, right? But I'm heading toward there because I want us to have a grounding, a common mindset about how to come to history, how to think about history, how to think about ourselves. Because one of the aspects of history is, why do we need the ideas about ourselves to make ourselves feel better? And where do those ideas come from? And the anchor of this is, why do we tell lies to ourselves? And why do we believe those lies? And why do we need those lies? And the lies and distortions of history are a great service to us living an honest and truthful life. Now here's where I'm coming from. The establishment of Cowboy, ranch, and rodeo culture. This is one of the characters I give about the vaquero character. So I have some rhetorical questions. And rhetorical questions are questions, you all know this. I don't want to answer it, but just for provocation of thought. Why is there McDonald's? Why is the Denver football team called the Broncos? Why, before the big football game, do people have tailgaters and they're cooking burgers and steak and everything? Why do we have barbecue? Why was there, now this is an existential question, of course, why was there John Wayne? Why was there Ray Rogers? Why was there Bonanza? Why was there Gunsmoke? Why was there Paladin and Have Gun Will Travel? Why was there Hopalong Cassidy? Why was there Gene Autry? Why was there Trigger? Why was there the Cisco Kid? Why was there the Lone Ranger, right? Why did the Bush Boys, can't stand them, I'm not talking politically, their whole life was a lie. And I'm talking both presidents, right? They were patricians from New England, right? One of their relatives was a senator, right? They were at the top of American culture, life, money, and everything. And you know what the Denver one did? Cast himself as a Texas cowboy, moved down to Texas, right? And from then on, I'm not a Texas cowboy, okay? Why did he do that? He should have done what he was. No, I'm a rich, fancy guy from New England. Can't you tell? No, he disavowed that because he wanted to attach himself to another idea. Now here's where we're starting to get into my topic today. The answer to why was there John Wayne, why are the Broncos, why do we have McDonald's, why do we eat hamburgers, why do we have all those cowboy shows on TV and everything, you know? Well, the answer goes back to a children's ditty that we all know. They don't teach it much in school anymore, but I look at the audience and a lot of us know here. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean. Love, that's that you came in on that. I love that you came in. 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So here's what we have. So Columbus, he's getting on the boat, he's coming over, right? And then he doesn't know where he's at, he's actually lost, and you know the whole story behind that and everything. But he lands in a new world. When he landed in the new world, there was not one single cow or one single horse here. Now the history of the horse is interesting. There had previously been horses in this part of the world, but they're tiny, they're like little dogs or something, right? But then they went extinct for 10,000 years. Meanwhile, the horse flourished in other parts of the world, but in this part of the world, they were extinct. So when the Spanish arrived, not a single cow, not a single horse on this continent, on these continents, North and South America. So they arrive, they bring a lot of things with them. One, they bring a language, they bring the Spanish language. You cannot go around the Southwest without running into the Spanish language upset. In the state I live in, Colorado, you can't go to a mountain, you can't go to a river, you can't go to a town, you can't run into people without running into the Spanish language. They brought a language, penetrated very deep into the Americas here. They brought a religion, they brought a system of government, they brought food types here and everything. But for our story today, they brought two animals. One of them they brought was the horse. Now Cortez, another character I know Cortez, or non-Cortez. In 1519, he came over with a legendary 16. 11 stallions, 5 mares, 16 horses. Within a couple of hundred years, there were millions of horses, Mustangs, running wild in the American Southwest and the northern part of Mexico. But he brought over 16 horses, 11 stallions, 5 mares. That was the beginning of horse culture brought over here. He also brought over some cattle. They brought cattle. And the beautiful part of our story is they brought 3 breeds of cattle. One of them was the Spanish fighting bull. I want to talk a little bit about the word cowboy. All right. Now, the vaquero, the person I presented last night, is the origins of American cowboy, ranch, and rodeo culture. Every single thing about cowboy, ranch, and rodeo culture came from one place and one place only, Andalusia, southwestern Spain, and one person only, El Vaquero, America's first cowboy. Now the Spanish language, any word that ends with ERO means before the word that is in the first part of it. So vaquero just means a person that's for the cow. Vaquero does not mean cowboy. Cowboy's got its own word. The first written instance of it is in the 1100s. And it's a little boy over in Ireland. And that little boy with a stick is taking the family herd of those sissy England cows, for Hereford, the Angus, the Durham, taking those sissy England cows, because a little boy, a cowboy, 2 words, almost an indentured servant to the family, could take the cows back and forth from the pasture with a stick. Next time the word cowboy shows up is in the Revolutionary War for Independence for Britain. And a cowboy was a cow thief. 2 words still, someone stealing cattle from the American patriots to feed the British soldiers. The next time it shows up is in the War of 1848, the war that the United States had with Mexico, where Mexico lost half its territory, and the United States gained all of the southwestern part of the United States, part of the Manifest Destiny emphasis. So what happens is, again, a cowboy was someone stealing cattle, right? Be strung up for that. When it got put together, and I mentioned it last night, is when those dime store novels started being written, and the romanticized, exaggerated exploits of this man that worked with large animals out in the West on wide open spaces. Then it became one word, cowboy, like that. Now here's what happens. Get those cows roaming around the Southwest, the cattle herd, right? You got horses here all of a sudden. And remember with the cattle, their bloodline directly related to the Spanish fighting bull. I want to tell you about the Spanish fighting bull. The Spanish fighting bull has 3 characteristics. 1, instinct to charge. 2, being tempered. 3, not afraid of people, human beings, right? So you let that bloodline roam around for a couple hundred years in the open plains of the American Southwest. All of a sudden, here's what you have. You have an animal with horns 8 feet tip to tip, instinct to charge, being tempered, not afraid of human beings. You have the Texas Longhorn. All of a sudden, the cowboy is not enough anymore. And the reason is you need a real man to handle those people, those animals. Now, when the New England settlers started coming into South Texas, they'd never seen 10,000 head on 100,000 acres. They'd never seen that before. They'd never seen an animal with horns 8 tip to tip, 8 feet. They'd never encountered the Texas Longhorn. Only one person had encountered that work. Been working with them for 200 years down there, actually, right? The Spanish colonial vaquero. Now, when I was doing this research, when I do research, I like to do primary source research. So I figure if I'm going to work up the El Vaquero character, I better go to the homeland, right? So I went to Spain. I went to Andalusia, southwestern Spain. And at the same time, I was working up Cortez. So Andalusia is down here, and Extremadura is right up here. I went to Extremadura also, because Extremadura is where all the famous conquistadores came from. Cortez, Pizarro, all of those guys came from Extremadura. That's another story. So what happens is I'm down there doing research, and if you're down there in southwestern Spain, Andalusia, if you didn't see the signs in kilometers and in Spanish, you would think you're driving around here, the western plains of New Mexico and Texas. Very desolate land, big sky, very dry. And you can understand how people needed the knowledge of large animals in wide open spaces, how to do that. So the other part of this is then I went down to Buenos Aires in Argentina, because I wanted to be introduced and immerse myself a little bit in gaucho culture down there. Now, the American cowboy drifted away from its Spanish roots. Gaucho culture down in Argentina stayed very true to its Spanish roots. One example is, remember the hat I had last night, the flat brim with the square crown? That's like a flamenco hat from Spain. If you see flamenco dancers, only they'll have those sissy red tassels. They do. Can't stand it, can't stand it. No real man has tassels off of his hat. That's all I can say. Don't tell any flamenco dancer I said that, okay? But then, but the gauchos, they don't have the cowboy hat, right? They still have the Spanish colonial hat, the vaquero hat. So I went down there and studied up and everything, kind of figured out a little bit more about it. Then one of the things I learned was, the other thing the Spanish brought, in addition to everything else, and the animals, they brought 900 years of knowledge about to handle large animals in wide open spaces. And that knowledge came down. Here's another thing. It's almost like a parlor game, like a little party game about language. When two cultures collide into each other, they cross-contaminate, or they cross-contaminates, too negative a word. They cross-influence each other, especially with language. So here's some examples of what happened when those Easterners come down into South Texas. Whoa, that's a big animal. How do you do this? Well, follow me around for a while. You learn about it, okay? Whoa, I got all this stuff. Follow me. I'm going to teach you how to dress. I'm going to teach you what tools to use. I'm going to teach you how to understand the psychology of these animals. And if you just do what I do, you'll get better at this. Because if you don't, you're going to have a really rough time with this. So that's basically what happened. Every single thing about rodeo, ranch, and cowboy culture that we know today came from one place, Andalusia, came from one person, the person you met last night, El Vaquero, the Spanish colonial cowboy. Here's an example about how language is. I just love doing this. The word, first of all, they come down, everyone's speaking Spanish, right? They're all speaking Spanish. And the Easterners come in. Now they're around these, I call them real men all of a sudden, right? They're around these real men all of a sudden. They're all speaking Spanish. So they're learning the words. Well, how do you describe what we're doing here? I'm going to pick up a few words, okay? One of them is the word rodeo. The word rodeo comes from the Spanish word rodear, which just means to gather up in a circle, right? Or to gather up. So men are always showing off, right? That's in our DNA. So I can ride a horse and not fall off. Okay? I can ride a bull and not fall off. See if you can do it. Hey, watch me. I can lasso something. Okay? So men are always showing, well, I can do it faster than you. Yeah, 8 seconds. I can do it in 8 seconds. Okay. So they're learning how to do things. So they get together and they'd have these show-off contests, right? And they gather up like this, and they call it, or let's really are, let's gather up. And that became the word rodeo. I love you, there's a lot of elderly people here, so I like the word hooskow. It's not a word in common use anymore, hooskow. Well, we all know if you're going to hooskow, where are you going? Going to jail, right? Going to jail, right? The word hooskow came from the word husgado, which means the courthouse. So if you're back in the day, we're going to the husgado, well, you're going to jail, you're going to the courthouse, because we have a hanging judge over there, right? So you can see how language jumps, starts out as a Spanish word, and then is adapted into an Anglicized version of it. But you lose the root, you lose the roots of where it came from. But if you study history, one of the fun things is everything comes from someplace. We all come from someplace. And when we return back to this through line, why are we the way we are? What made us the way we are? What gives us the words that we use to describe what we do? Or if you're interested at all in history, it's very interesting to spend some time learning about, oh, that's why I am. That's why I call it a rodeo. That's why I call it the hooskow. You know the word jerky, that Big Bob jerky you buy in the store when you're on a trip and everything, comes from the word charquear, which just means just to cut into strips, to dry meat and cut into strips. The word jerky came from that. The word stampede came from the word stampedado, which means a rush, a torrent. The word the reata, the rope, lariat, the word lariat comes from reata, which just means the rope. The word lasso comes from the word lasso, which just means a trap. The word chaps comes from chaparral, which is the official bushes out in the distance like that. Really, I have hundreds of these that I could describe. My favorite one is the 10-gallon hat. Who can describe a 10-gallon hat to me? What's it look like? Raise your hand. Someone tell me. Big, big, how big? Big, big. You know, 10-gallon hat, big, right? Well, people think the 10-gallon hat comes from volume, that it must be the whole 10 gallons. That's not where that word comes from. So you got the owner of the ranch, right? There's always the rich guy and the working guy. And the rich guy, he's, like last night I said, he's always tall in the saddle, he rides clean, right? He's got a fancy hat. Now, did you notice my hat last night had a silver band around it like this? One silver band. Well, the rich guys that owned the ranch, when they went into town, they put their fancy hat on, okay? And one of the ways they would show off with people about how rich they were is how many silver bands they had on it, right? The more silver bands you put on it, what has to happen to the crown? The bigger the crown has to get, right? So you're adding all these bands, the crowns get bigger and bigger. It's an old Spanish word, tangalan. It's untranslatable, actually. But I'll give you an image of it. Tangalan kind of means, ay que suave. I don't even need to translate. Okay, tangalan means ay que suave, right? Cool, you know, it's cool dude, how to go cool dude, you know, stuff like that. So the workers would see the boss in town with his big fancy hat on, and they'd say, oh, that man, he's tangalan. That's tangalan, meaning it's cool, it's super cool dude. And then the English speakers saw this hat called, references tangalan, what did they start calling it? Tangalan hat, you know. So once you see it, it's like I said at the party game, you see the jump that language makes, that's really fun. And then it gets lost over time. But if you love history, you read about it, you study about it, then you learn about something, right? So here we go, we have all this going on and everything, you know. And then you have the vaqueros out here, you have people writing stories about them and everything. And then language is jumping cultures, and English settlers are coming in, and they're learning how to handle large animals in wide open spaces from the Spanish colonial vaqueros. The Spanish colonial vaqueros taught them everything about it. These are the tools you use, these are the language you use to describe what we're doing, and then you got to dress a certain way and everything. So I want to talk a little bit about the dress for a second. The hat. Now I got a fancy Panama Cuban style hat on today. Who owns a cowboy hat? Describe it to me. What does it look like?
My husband and I bought it so he could go to the Oklahoma City Hall of Fame once a year.
Cowboy Hall of Fame, absolutely. Oklahoma City,
Cowboy.
absolutely.
So it's gray,
Okay.
it's not real showy.
What's the shape like? Does the bringo circle look like this?
No,
No, is
it's
it flat?
not straight.
Does it have an indention like this up here?
I don't think so.
Remember?
Doesn't
Okay.
wear it very often.
Okay, it sits on the wall, right? Okay, who else has that? Tell me what your hat's like. Tell me.
The shape, what you're describing, is this way, and you just have a solid high crown or low crown, the shape of his face.
Okay, okay. Anyone else? Who has a hat you want to describe? Tell me about your hat.
House Cartwright kind of hat.
Oh, yeah, house Cowboy. House Cowboy. Everybody knows what house Cowboy is. Rounded top. Okay. Okay, let me tell you about the hat. Everything comes from somewhere, right? So we all have a version of the Western cowboy hat. Last night, I wore a true vaquero hat. Flat, square crown, right? Now, does anyone own a Stetson hat? Stetson. You own a Stetson? Know two things about you. One, paid a lot of money for that hat. Know that. No, I guess he did. Two, I know that hat's important to you because you paid a lot of money for it. And he wanted a Stetson. You know, that's the key. He wanted a Stetson hat. Okay, now Stetson, you say arguably. Whenever a speaker says the word arguably, you know the next thing they say is, it's his, from his point of view, it's the truth. Arguably, Stetson hat's the best cowboy hat. Right? World renowned for this one. Willing to pay the money, you can pay up to $5,000 for a Stetson hat. Right? But you can pay less too, but they're expensive. They're still considered the best hat. Right? Let me tell you about the Stetson hat. John B. Stetson. Right? So he's in Philadelphia. And I feel that this relates to my thing. Why are we where we are? Why do we have the stuff we have? Well, there's always a story for it if you learn history. John B. Stetson, he's in Philadelphia. And he belongs to a family of hatters. So he already has the art and the craft and the skill and the knowledge. But how do you get animal felt, animal skin, turn it into a hat? Now, the preference skin is always beaver, right? Beaver is the best skin. And you see these cowboy hats, they have a bunch of X's inside them around the brim. Don't be impressed by those X's. Those X's mean nothing if you really know about cowboy hats. Because for some maker, they'll have 5 X's, and that equals to 10 X's from someone else. What you really want to know is what's the percentage of the animal skins in that hat. 100% beaver, you're going to pay $5,000 for that hat, right? The hats underneath that have a mix of beaver and other types of animal skins. So, but he knew how to take animal skins, his family did, make the little derby, make the Abraham Lincoln hat and everything, you know. So then he had, this was post-Civil War, he had consumption. Nowadays we call it tuberculosis. Now, believe it or not, back in those days, medicine was unsophisticated in relation to our day, of course, you know. They thought the cure for consumption, tuberculosis, was to come out west. Get away from the polluted industrial air of the East Coast. Come out here, clean air and sunshine. That was the prescription for tuberculosis. So he'd come out here. So sure enough, John B., he packs up, he comes out here, right? Now he's out here on a day like today, big sky, he's out in the west. Fresh air. In fact, the city of Denver, where I live, somewhat famous for a site for consumptive patients to come for treatment there. The National Jewish Center, which is a large hospital in Denver, nowadays it's renowned worldwide for its expertise in respiratory illnesses. It was founded to treat consumptive tuberculosis patients coming out to Denver. In Denver, we have now the $1 million condos, right? These big apartment units with big patios, and every unit has access to the patio. And the reason is, if you see these historical photos, there were sanitariums where the tuberculosis consumptive patients would stay. And the reason they're open, the big open patio like this facing south, the treatment every day, roll them out in the bed, put them in the sun for a few hours, bring them back. That was the treatment for tuberculosis consumption. So John B. comes out here to get the cure. And then he's sitting around the campfire one night, and men are doing what they like to do, just BSing and challenging each other. But the men had a problem. They had the wrong hat. Now, on a day like this, on the big sky, they all had the wrong hat. A lot of them had the farmer's hat, small little brim. This is post-Civil War, so a lot of them had the army hat. Small little brim. And a lot of them have what I call the Gabby Hayes hat, the slouch hat. I call it just a rag thrown on top of your head. Okay, so the Gabby Hayes hat. None of them had the right hat. Only one man had the right hat. That's vaquero. Now remember the Spanish brought over, how are you going to dress for doing this work out here? Well, one, you got to wear the right hat. Now we all have the image of the sombrero, right? The big red hat. It's a good hat, without working outside like that. Okay, remember the Spanish language? Every word that ends in ERO stands for whatever's in front of it. Where in the Spanish language, the word sombra means shade or darkness. So a sombrero is a hat that's for the shade of the darkness on your face. So that's where the word sombrero came from and what it means really. So the vaquero had the right hat, a wide brim, a lot of shade on your face, and a large crown for air circulation. So they all knew that was a better hat than the hat they had on. But the Spanish colonial vaqueros already knew, if you're going to be working out here all day, you got to be wearing one of these. That dumb hat you have on is not going to do it, right? So then what happens is, they challenge, this is a legend, but it's a true story. Hey, John B., I'm dying out here. Can you make me that hat? And he points to the vaquero hat. I had a hat on last night, flat brim, square crown. So then what happens is this. John B. says, yeah, I can make that hat. So he makes a mix, 50% beaver pelt and rabbit, 50-50, beaver and rabbit. Does the magic sauce on it and everything. Makes himself a vaquero hat. And now he's got the hat for the shade, right? The sombrero. So then what happens is, another man comes up to me, hey, John B., I'm still dying out here. You only made one of those hats. Give you $5 gold piece for that hat. A $5 gold piece today is like throwing $1,000 down on the table, right? Well, John B., he sold him the hat for the $5 gold piece. Hey, then a miracle happened, believe it or not. The sunshine and clean air of the West, John B. started feeling better. Oh, I can breathe. This is good. He went back home to Philadelphia. And he went back to the family business. But you know what he was thinking about? That $5 gold piece. He said, you know, man, the man gave me a $5 gold piece for that hat. I could make a lot of those hats. So he left the family business, started his own hat company, the John B. Stetson Hat Company. Early part of the 1900s, the John B. Stetson Hat Company was shipping out west 2 million hats a year. That hat was a good hat. You fan the fire with it. In fact, if you buy a modern Stetson hat, their image on it, and my last part of my thing, I'm going to talk about image quite a bit. They have a cowboy with his horse, and this is both on the, I have a Stetson hat, of course I have a Stetson hat, but on the inside is the image on the little fabric they have inside the hat, but on the boxes, you get the modern box, the Stetson hat. There's a cowboy by a lake, and the horse and the cowboy, in a kind, compassionate, and gentle gesture, is giving the horse some water in his hat, right? So that's the image Stetson's taken on itself. That our hats, you're connected to this guy, all right? In the wild, giving water to his horse. Not that sissy guy, a real man in the wild, wearing our hat, the Stetson hat. So, you can fan the fire, feed your horse, make the horse go fire. People say you can shoot a bullet through the stores. People would say, they're going to be kind of weird, but They could tell their hat by smell alone. So there's a lot of mythos around the Stetson hat. So that's the story. But then Stetson did a couple of cool things. I call them technological advancements. One of them was the personalization of the hat. His first hat was actually called the Boss of the Plains. And it had a more rounded crown like this. And you can look it up on the internet, the Boss of the Plains, first Stetson hat. What he did was this idea of the personalization of the hat, right? Now, you can always tell a real cowboy when they take their hat off, they don't put it brim down, they put it crown down. And the reason is you spend a lot of time shaping your brim. You don't want to mess it up. If you go, say, Western Shot Show in Denver in January, they have guys that are selling hats, you know. But when they sell you the felt hat, because you have a straw hat for summer or a felt hat for winter, when you buy the felt hat, the brim's flat, right? And they have a steamer there, like a clothes steamer. They have a steamer, you steam the brim. And this is what I call the vanity of the 7th grade girl. I've seen it, I've done it myself. So you get your hat, the brim's flat. But you want to shape it the way you want it. And some people like a big brim, some people like it like this, some people like it, you know, you can shape the brim however you want. But once it dries, because of the Gupta glue they have in using it, it dries hard, right? And it keeps it shaped. So you never want to put it down on the brim because you could break the brim. You want to keep it crown down. So I see these big men, these bruiser cowboy types, right? And they're with their buddies, right? That's why I call it the vanity of the 7th grade girl getting dressed for school that morning. They're standing in front of the mirror like this. What do you think like this? I don't know, kind of like this. I don't know. Okay. Now making fun of it, but this is true. If you ever been around a guy steaming his brim, they spend some time on it, right? Because they know once it dries hard, that's the shape. And they know the shape is important to them because it represents something to other people. So they're there doing that. So he introduced the idea that you could shape the brim the way you want to. The other thing he did was what this hat has, that indention, that was a cool move. And the reason is, you saw my hat last night, and I don't have a big hand or anything. To take it off, I can't wrap it like that enough. I have to actually take it off by the brim. I don't like touching the brim. I already told you that, right? I got to take it off by the brim like that. So having the indention where you can just go, just like that, that was good. That was an improvement on the basic design. So that's a little bit again about how something is fundamental as the Western cowboy hat. So now we have the animals came over from Spain. The knowledge of how to handle these animals came over from Spain. The language we use came over from Spain. The hat came over from Spain. Every single thing about cowboy ranch and rodeo culture. One origin, Andalusia, one person, El Vaquero. Now, here's what happens when the movies start taking, and here's where I'm going to start to wrap things up. Why the cowboy? It's an image that the United States has taken upon as its singular image of itself. A man stands proud. A man who seals the deal with a handshake. A man who looks you in the eye when he's talking to you. A man who says what he means and means what he says. A man who's polite to women and children. A man who's honest. A man who's true. A man who's self-reliant. A man who works hard from sunup to sundown. A man who works for what he has. Nothing's given to him. He works for everything he has. All those qualities are contained in the mythos of the American cowboy. All those qualities are contained in the central image the United States has of itself. This is who we are as a country. And that guy, the American cowboy, represents everything we value that's good about ourselves. And we're going to export that image to the whole world. I got to talk about John Wayne, the main person responsible for that, right? He was a 6'4" sissy. No. He was a movie actor, right? You know what his real name was? Marion. Marion Morris. Do you want the American hero named Marion? Roy Rogers. You know what Roy Rogers' name was? Leonard Sky. Leonard. You want the American hero named Leonard? No, I'm not. Marion and Leonard are perfectly fine names. Some parent gave those boys those names, Marion and Leonard. And then they decided, no, I could not be Marion and Leonard. I need a short, one-syllable man's name. John, Gene, Roy, Clint, right? Those are the names, not Marion and Leonard. John Wayne wore a tuxedo to the Oscars, okay? He's not the guy you see in the movies, right? The guy you see in the movies was invented for us to feel good about ourselves. And now we're back at the beginning of my talk. Why do we need those images to feel good of ourselves? Why have we invented these fake people to feel good about ourselves, to feel we're that type of person? The reason is that's what people do. We make up images ourselves, okay? Why do people buy the quarterback's jersey with a number on it and then wear it around in public, right? So that people think, hey, you know, I'm kind of like Patrick Mahomes, so you think about it. Not the same shirt, number that he has. You know, you really think about it. I'm kind of like him, he's kind of like me. Want to go home with me tonight? Why do we do stuff like that? It's one of the beautiful, weak, but precious parts of being human beings. We create these mythical stories to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. What I like to know about history is if you study history, you're going to feel plenty good about yourself just by knowing the truth of how it all actually happened. We persevered and we made it through. Remember, we're in the river, right? We're making history every single day that we live. Okay, now this person's drifting up. I know what that means. I do know what that means. They're already real polite about it. You know what I wish they'd do, but they never do. I wish they'd just do this. Thank you very much. We love you coming. But they never do that. They do this. Okay, we got a few minutes. Questions and answers. What do we got? Ask me a few things. I've been rambling on, but I've tried to do some through lines, tell you a little bit about the true origins of rodeo ranks and cowboy culture, and the true reasons we gotta have John Wayne. We gotta have it. Tell me the question.
Do you have any historical stories about the cowboy of western Nebraska?
You know what? I don't.
Okay.
My specialty is Hispanic Southwest, so that would be my homeland. Another show I do. Last night you heard me tell a few stories at the beginning. Remember my pre-show and long show and everything. Those are from a larger show called Cuentos de Aztlán, Stories of the Homeland. My homeland is southern Colorado, northern New Mexico, eastern plains of New Mexico, and that cowboy land and everything. Actually, it's an honest, good question. That'd be someone else's work.
Yes.
I'm over here, hope someone else picks it up over here. Because there's a true history of that here in Nebraska, yes. Yes.
I just wondered what the history of the belt buckles is. You know, people take a lot of pride in what
I'm dressed in an outfit on purpose. Whenever I present, I always dress up. And the reason is that's a respect for you, it's respect for myself. So I come from the world of theater, so it's all costume, right? It's all image and presentation and everything, you know. I like wearing this because my stepdad, Joe, this was his, and when he died, it came on to me. I actually have another cowboy hat that I wear. It has all these turquoise stones on it from the Geronimo mines down in New Mexico. And my Uncle Marty had that. That came down to me, and I wear that when I'm wearing my Stetson hat like this. I never wear like that, with that around there and everything. So I like wearing turquoise. I'm 27% Native American, Haikari Apache. So there's a reason I have brown skin. It's the Native blood in me. I'm very proud of that. And then this belt here was done by a Native artist. And it has a southwestern scene on it, and it has all these animals with the buttes and mesas of Arizona on it and everything. So I like kind of representing a little cultural heritage of where I'm coming from. Makes me feel presentational, and it makes me feel that I'm being honest representing the people who I actually am. So thank you for asking that. Thank you for listening. She's the only one that's hard because she's sitting right in front of me. Everyone else is going, what's he talking about?
One more question.
Where, any one more question? Yes.
So like you talked about like the mashing of cultures, like with the Spanish and the settlers. Is there any indigenous culture as well within the Cowboy?
You know what? This is interesting. The first vaqueros were native. And the reason is the Spanish come up, and then you had two types of people coming up. You had conquistadores, the explorers. They're looking for 3 G's, God, glory, and gold, right? So they're one set of people. The other people that are coming up were the friars. And they're coming up setting missions because their job, you know, it's a rough historical story, of course. Their job is to save the souls of the heathen Indians, right? And then at the beginning, no native person was allowed to own or ride a horse. Because a horse was seen as an animal of dominance. But you get up in California where you had the 21 missions there, and then they had all this land, work had to be done, they had the horses and everything. None of the friars or landowners or anything would do the hard work of taking care of the land. So the native Indians were the ones that they had to let them ride the horse in order to do the work of the missions. And they have historical drawings of them, of course, no photography from the days, it's historical drawings. They're either barefooted or they had sandal moccasins on. That cowboy boot had not been invented yet as a tool of this type of work. So the Indians were the first vaqueros, actually. Mission Indians in California and in Texas were the first people working these large animals in wide open spaces, doing the work of the land and the animals. Then that became looser, of course, and then the real thing that happened was the penetration of the horse into Indian culture catapulted native cultures immediately, especially the Plains Indians, right? Now, it's not that the horse was a work animal, it was a transportation animal. You could travel in a way you couldn't travel before. So the penetration of the horse in the native culture, transformed native culture, there's a whole history about just that event and that phenomenon happened, especially the Plains Indians of the United States. And then, but the vaquero and the Indian things were parallel, but not intermixed like this. Their histories are very separate, not like this. Even though in the work on the trail drives, everyone think it was John Wayne and his guys and friends and everything, you know. There's a very diverse group on the trails. People say up to a quarter to a half of the people on the trails could be mixed, black, Indian, or Spanish colonial Mexicans, right? And then, of course, Anglo people too, you know. But it wasn't all Anglo people. It was a very mixed group of people actually doing the work on the trail. Thank you for that question.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you all very much.